Welcome, fight fans, to a special one-hour edition of Fight News Now. I am John Ramdeen alongside Robin Black, and we are counting down the days to UFC 165, which goes down at the Air Canada Centre right here in the T-Dot. In the main event, the 205-pound championship will be on the line when Jon Jones takes on the Swedish sensation Alexander Gustafsson. With that said, let's take a look at Saturday's main event.
Welcome to the exciting life of Jon Jones. Despite an MMA career spanning just over 5 years, Bones has seen his fair share of highs and lows. The highs have included becoming the youngest UFC champion on the same night he stopped a mugger in New Jersey.
I grabbed the guy's feet and then I put him in this move because I went to college for criminal justice and I had a class defensive tactics. So I grabbed him and I figure four his legs and I set on his legs.
The destruction of 5 former UFC champions.
He just needs to secure the right arm. Now he's going for a Kimura. It's all over! That's it.
A record-tying 5 light heavyweight title defenses.
You owe it to yourself to believe and to work really hard and define all the odds, you know.
And a global Nike sponsorship deal, including his own shoes.
If nature can't break you, no man will.
The lows have seen Jones handed his first loss by DQ.
Now I'm not worried about being undefeated anymore, so I can go out there and be more relaxed.
A vicious personal fallout with former training partner Rashad Evans.
Like I'm on camera joking around cocky. He's like, go to sleep praising himself cocky. That's how cocky he is.
An impaired driving charge.
We all make mistakes, and as long as he's trying to take those positive steps and trying to do the right thing, I think we should all respect that and kind of support him.
And the cancellation of the first UFC show ever being placed on his shoulders.
I just thought I meant a lot to the UFC, and they made me feel like a piece of meat. Like a total piece of meat.
After all that, what could possibly keep the champ hungry?
There's things that Matt Hughes has done more than me. GSP has won more titles than me. Anderson Silva has won more titles than me. There's just so many records that are out there that I don't have. So that's why, like, when people consider me the #1 fighter in the world, yet I own when I don't own many records, it doesn't sit well with me.
Everybody has been complaining about Jon Jones, that he's too big, he's this, he's that, which is total bullshit. I don't care if he's 10 feet tall, if he's 205 pounds, then he's right for the weight class. Finally, he's fighting a guy who's his size, almost the same reach, everything is almost the same age, so this is going to be a very interesting fight.
Alexander Gustafsson stands 1 inch taller than the champ and has the longest reach of anyone Jones has faced so far in his career.
My reach is not 76.5, it's 81.2, by the way. I just want to mention that.
However, Jones is still the heavy favorite in this one.
He's a champion for a reason, and I'm so ready for this fight. I'm very motivated, and my win would just taste better.
If the Swede has an advantage in this fight, it may be on the feet with his slick boxing attack.
It's not always about reach, it's about footwork, it's being fast, in and out. Yeah, I will win this fight. Been staying on the outside. No doubt about it.
However, Jones feels that where others have failed, the challenger will fail as well.
I mean, I fought Rampage Jackson. He hit me like twice in the whole fight. Leo Machida was able to touch my face like twice in the whole fight. Fighting against the best guys in the world, and a lot of them never even get a chance to punch you in the face throughout the fight.
Few are giving the Mauler a chance, but let's not forget Jones' last fight.
All right, I'm here with the champ. Oh, he's got a broken foot.
If Chael gets out of that first round, he would be fighting Gustafsson.
Should Jon Jones win the fight? People can't make the argument that he's too big for the weight class anymore. If Alexander wins the fight, then a lot more people are going to know all over the world, not just Sweden, who Alexander is.
We are happy to be joined by UFC veteran and all-around good dude, Jeff Jocelyn. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us. And we got to get right to the main event, one of the all-time best. Jon Jones looks to defend his title on Saturday night against Alexander Gustafsson. I think the safe bet is to pick Jon Jones in this fight. What do you like about him?
About Jon Jones?
Yeah.
There's so much to like. He has a good striking, great confidence, huge confidence going into the cage, and I think that's probably going to be the major problem for Gustafsson in this fight, is the confidence that Jon Jones is going to bring. He's got good grappling skills. You know, he's getting that killer instinct where he's just going for the finish right away. You see him finish Sonnen with a broken toe. Yeah. Fortunately for him, he got the job done with that killer instinct. But I think it's going to be a tough fight for Gustafsson.
When you went to fight Josh Koscheck, you were facing a guy who had a ton of confidence as well. He believed that, you know, he would be able to handle any debuting guy in the UFC. How did you mentally go and prepare for a guy that's that confident?
Well, I had to have as much confidence as him, so I was ready. You know, we felt comfortable in 2 ranges, so I looked at it as I was stronger in striking, stronger in jiu-jitsu. Maybe he had the wrestling, so it's all about your mindset. You have to really believe in yourself 100%.
And for Gustafsson, where do we think that you know, he's going to want this fight?
I don't know. I'm not sure he's even sure. You know, this is the thing. If you look at the guy, if he's a better striker than you, maybe he's a better wrestler than you, better jiu-jitsu, and he's a great athlete. You know, it's tough. I think he's going to come out and try to land some strikes early and hurt John.
For Alexander Gustafsson, I think you talk about confidence. Well, very similar record to John Jones. He's 15-1, only has that 1 loss, and I know that John Jones' loss isn't really a loss. But the fact is, this for Gustafsson, he's coming off a victory over Shogun, the same guy that John Jones defeated for the title. He's almost the same size as John Jones. He's not going to be intimidated or overwhelmed by John Jones. The fact is, you talk about confidence. Does he have to move forward? Does he have to try to hurt John Jones early? Or does he use that first round as a very important feeling out process?
I think he has to, you know, make it a bit of a war. You know, get John Jones emotional, throw his strikes, uncomfortable. You know, hit him in the face. That's pretty much what it comes down to. Hit him and catch him and make it a war. But John Jones has showed, you know, good composure and doesn't get sucked into that type of, you know, fight.
It's a weird one when you think about it, because the reality is John Jones is an elite fighter, maybe one of the best fighters in the world.
I think he is.
Yeah, I mean, arguably one of the best fighters ever, and still getting better. So do you go into that and look at it and think, you know, this guy isn't that great, not buy into it and treat him as a man and be confident in yourself? Or do you deal with the reality of how good he is and build a game plan accordingly?
Well, that's what you do in your training. So obviously he's prepared. He knows John Jones is a very tough fighter, so he's prepared, strong. But in the fight, you have to, you know, don't show the guy too much respect. Forget who it is. You know, he's going to go down just like anybody else will go down when they hit with a punch. He can be caught with a submission after he's rocked. So get in there and take the fight. Fight to win. Don't fight not to lose. A lot of guys fight not to lose.
That was how Weidman beat Anderson Silva, was with that mentality, so it can be done.
The problem is John Jones, you talk about his confidence, the guy doesn't deviate from his game plan. He knows how to get the job done. We've seen it time and time again. This is a man that has toppled former champions, Rashad, Rampage, Shogun, just some of the best fighters in the 205-pound division. To shake his confidence is going to be a very difficult task, but I mean, Gustafsson's same age as John Jones, 26 years of age. I mentioned the records. Again, I don't see how Gustafsson's going to be able to do it, and how he's not going to have it in his mind that he's facing, because you go online, a lot of people believe that he's the best fighter in the world, and as you just mentioned, probably the best fighter of all time, considering this is a guy that's been in the sport for such a short period of time. And what about the fact that for Gustafsson, he hasn't fought since December? The ring rust, is that going to be a factor?
I don't think so. If you train properly, it doesn't really matter. I've never noticed it in my fights. I've taken some time off with injuries, but you know, I think it'll be okay that way. But I think the fight is going to be a whole nother story. It's going to be a tough fight.
Yeah, and I mean, fights are not contested on paper, but on paper, Jones is a better athlete. He's bigger and stronger. He has an amazing team. He has incredible skills. He's great at range. He's great. You know, you look at on paper, and there's no way this guy wins. So Gustafsson has to make it about not that. He has to make it about, you know, aggression, about, you know, try to beat him mentally and try to throw him off his game.
The real problem is if he starts to be effective with the striking, Jones is an absolute monster when he gets on top of you. So I think Jones is going to have extreme confidence knowing that he could probably put this fight to the ground and finish him off there if it, because really we haven't seen Gustafsson groundwork too much.
Yeah, I mean, his only loss, of course, coming to Phil Davis by submission. You know what they say, though, if you can't beat him, join him, and that's exactly what Alexander Gustafsson did. Decided to go to the Alliance team to work with Phil Davis and those guys in California, and it shows that he wants to improve and wants to grow as a martial artist, and I think you have to do that in today's day and age. You have to work with good guys, people that are better than you, because we've seen guys like BJ Penn who are the king of their castle, so to speak, and they really don't live up to their potential when nobody's pushing them to get better.
Exactly. A lot of guys are comfortable and they like just being the big fish in the small pond, but you have to put yourself in the position that where you're you're getting, you know, spanked a little bit on the mats, and you're getting pushed around. You're getting in troublesome situations, so that when it comes in the fight, it doesn't shock you.
And yeah, and Gustafsson's been getting spanked a little bit in the gym, but this is a whole different level of spanking, I think.
And with that said, we'll hear from a number of fighters who give their take on Saturday night's main event.
Jon Jones is very good at this sport. I question his toughness on a daily basis. I fought him, and his toe came through his skin. He then showed up to the press conference with a smile on his face 30 minutes later.
Jones never fought anybody like Alex before. He's going to find out that evening what Alex is all about.
I'm going to choose Alex for an upset just because of the footwork, the striking, and the boxing. I think he brings a different dynamic to Jon Jones that Jones hasn't seen.
Gustafsson may be a better striker, but that all goes out the window because not only does Jon fight hard, he's smart.
The way he just dominates everybody. You haven't seen him really have a tough fight. Maybe against Rashad was his toughest fight, but you really haven't seen him get pressed yet.
From everybody that works with him, including Phil Davis, including Mark Munoz, this guy's a totally different athlete now.
As I've trained with him, I've seen his wrestling. I know his striking is great, and he can give Jon Jones a battle.
Can Gustafsson stop his takedown? Because right now, I think Jones has been able to pretty much take everybody down.
He needs to take Gustafsson down. It makes the fight easier for him, and I think he's going to do that, and I think he's going to win the fight.
I am reluctant to accept his position at the top of the mountain, but that doesn't mean he's not there, even in my denial.
We heard from some of the sport's best, and they give their take on the main event, and a little bit of biased talk from Brendan Vera and Dominic Cruz as they work with Alexander Gustafsson. But is it as simple as, for Jon Jones, get this fight down to the ground? Will it be that easy? Can you learn to be a good wrestler in 6 months, 8 months?
I think Jones is going to strike a bit. He's a showman. He likes to put on a good show, and the more you strike, you know, it ups your stock as a fighter. People want to see you more. They don't want to see you take people down over and over again and just lay on them. Not that he would do that. I think he would take him down and pound away. But you know, they like a good mix. So I think he's going to start off with striking, but ultimately try to work the wrestling.
Yeah, when I spoke to him last, he was talking about how he'd fallen in love with the art of boxing. You know, he just loves it. This is an opportunity to show that, and the more he commits to that striking, the easier that takedown will come. If he really has, that was the one area of his range that he maybe hadn't shown a lot of skill. If he's mastered that one too, this guy's unbeatable.
And the thing is, when you drop a guy with a punch, all of a sudden you're like, well, why do I have to grapple? You don't even have to get in there and get dirty. You know, it's a weird feeling. A lot of people get addicted to that feeling once you get your first KO.
When we come back to the special edition of Fight News Now, we're talking about the co-main event of UFC 165.
For the UFC Interim Bantamweight Championship of the World, Eddie Wineland and Barao!
Welcome back to a special edition of Fight News Now. The co-feature on Saturday night at UFC 165 features the UFC interim bantamweight title fight between Renan Barao and Eddie Wineland, and we take a closer look.
And still, the interim UFC Bantamweight Champion, Renan Barao.
Obrigado a todos aqui presentes aqui. Obrigado por estar aqui.
Thank you all of you for coming to watch the fight. And Dominic Cruz, I'm waiting for you. Please come quick.
As the only interim champion to defend his title, the next obvious choice for Barao would have been Dominic Cruz, but making that match would be put on hold.
You know, I'm looking to be back beginning early next year in 14. And I can't give an exact date because the truth is I haven't been even cleared by the doctor.
So at UFC 161, Barao would take a bout with former WEC bantamweight champion Eddie Wineland. But weeks before the fight, the interim champion would pull out with a foot injury. The fight would be scratched from the card and moved to UFC 165 in Toronto as the co-main event. Barao has developed his game alongside featherweight champion Jose Aldo at the famed Nova União gym in Rio de Janeiro. The 26-year-old has used unorthodox striking, spinning back kick to the body, flying knee, as well as an aggressive submission game to score finishes in 20 of his 30 wins. The Brazilian also rides a 20-fight win streak into the second defense of his interim title. Eddie Wineland may not be riding a long win streak or have a huge name, but his history,
I was the first WBC belt holder,
and 2 signature wins
Down goes Jorgensen, he's out!
secured the Indiana native a shot at the interim champion anyway. The 29-year-old has been in the sport for 10 years and has a clear goal for his future.
The ultimate goal would be to retire with the belt. To win the belt, it'd be kind of like a homecoming.
At UFC 165, we'll see if Barao can continue his path of destruction on the way to a bout with Dominic Cruz, or if Wineland can upset the champ and claim interim gold for himself.
The UFC interim bantamweight championship on the line when Eddie Wineland takes on Renan Barao. And Robin, we talked about this before, that Eddie Wineland's been preparing for this fight for quite some time, as it was supposed to go down in Winnipeg. Does it give him maybe a mental advantage, considering that he's had a little bit more time to prepare for this fight?
Well, you take that guy's picture and you put it up on your wall, and that's all you think about for your 6 or 8 weeks. But when it ends up being months and months and months, it can be good and it can be bad. You can overfocus, you can overtrain. But I think a guy like Eddie Wineland has been around for a long time, has been in this game a long time. If he built up a specific strategy that he's going to use against Barao, this just gives him time to perfect it.
And for Eddie, this is obviously a tough guy, the biggest test of his career, but the guy knows how to be a champion. He was a champion in the World Extreme Cage Fighting Organization. What are the keys to victory to becoming a champion?
You have to first believe in yourself 100%. If you doubt yourself before the fight, during the fight, you're going to be in big trouble. And then you just got to fight hard. You got to try to implement your game plan, be smart, don't get over emotional in the fight, don't let things throw you off. When things go bad, if you have a bad round, you have to clear the slate and just know it's a whole new round, and you can put this guy out the next round.
And you got 5 to do it. And you know, in theory, Eddie Wineland has the type of striking that you fight a guy like Barao. He's very flashy, he's very fancy, he comes in on angles, he goes flying in. Against a guy like that, in theory, you're supposed to 1-2 hook, keep it simple, keep your chin tucked, and just perfect the basics and try to beat a guy like that. Wineland has that game, and he's got a lot of power. One straight right hand can put this fight away.
Yeah, studying these guys, you know, Barao comes from the outside a lot. So, like Robin was mentioning, if you come straight down the pipe and catch him, and if you have power, which he's shown power, you know, you can put the guy out and win the fight. That being said, I think Barao's going to have a lot of confidence. He has a very well rounded skill set. You know, it's going to pose a lot of trouble for his opponent.
And what about teammates? Of course, Renan Barao works with absolute monsters at Novo União in Brazil, including UFC featherweight champion Jose Aldo, who many people believe is one of the pound-for-pound, if not the pound-for-pound best. So to be able to work with guys like that, as a matter of fact, when I was in, just recently I called K1, and former K1 champion Andy Sowers said he went down to Novo União and he was working with those athletes, and he said it gave him a new appreciation for martial arts. He said, because you know what these guys lacked in skill, they all made up with heart and their determination to become the best in the world. Do you still have that fire when you have the title around your waist?
I think it depends on the person. You know, I think some people, they're even more fired up to keep that title, keep those big paydays coming, right? So I think definitely he's motivated, and young guy, so he's training hard all the time and like, surrounded by people that are very positive and working very hard. So I think there's no question about motivation.
Yeah, and he hasn't lost in 20 plus fights. In his mind, he's a winner. It seems like an impossibility to lose. Those are tough guys to beat. You know, but Wineland at the same time, this is his chance, and he's really physically powerful. He needs to make this fight about that. This is a 135 pounder who does 475 pound deadlifts. Just real raw power. He needs to make this fight about that. He has a much better chance, in my opinion, than Gustafsson has against Jones, because he has certain tools that he can make work against Barao. But Barao is such a monster. You got to think he's a big favorite.
For Eddie Wineland, his last couple of losses coming to Joseph Benavidez and Uriah Faber. I mean, these are two of the best guys in the Ultimate Fighting Championship, whether it be 125 pounds or 135 pounds. Again, confidence has to be a factor. Do you believe that Wineland will try to fight from the outside, or will he try to get in close and try to overwhelm Barao?
He wants to be in the pocket. He wants this fight to take place where we're in distances, where my fist can touch your chin and vice versa, and roll those dice. You know, I would not be surprised. Barao has the highest level of black belts in his gym, all of them to train with. This might be a great time to see Barao's ground game But Wineland has great takedown defense. This is the more you think out loud about this fight, I think it's a little closer than people give it credit for, but it's still Barao's a big favorite.
However, I look at the fight with Barao and Michael McDonald, who is clearly the future of the 135-pound division, and he almost had his way with this guy. He broke the confidence of the youngster, and it shows you what type of individual the Brazilian is. A guy that's so mentally strong, can really put forth this game plan and make top-level fighters look like they don't belong in the cage.
Yeah, and Jeff, I want to ask you, when you're looking at somebody like that, and we talked about it a little bit with Gustafsson and Jones, how can you mentally prepare for that moment when you go over and you touch the guy's gloves and you're touching the gloves of a guy who hasn't lost in years and many think is beyond your reach?
Well, you just have to have confidence in your autopilot. You know, when a fight begins, there's no thinking. It's autopilot. So if you've trained and done all your homework, that autopilot works very, very well. So, if he's done his homework in the gym, things are going to come off quickly. And a fight's a fight. Anybody can get caught at any time. You can make a mistake. This fight can come down, I think, to a lot of who has the better wrestling. You know, if one person can put the other person at the bottom, if Wineland can get on top, work his ground and pound, he might be able to catch him.
And what about surprises? I'm sort of cut you off because you train a specific way. You've watched tape on fighters. You say, I know what their tendencies are. I am confident they're going to come at me a certain way, and then they bring something that we're not anticipating. How easy is it to make adjustments on the fly?
It's tough. It's tough. Yeah. That's why I think where Barao, we were talking about the gym and all the guys he trains with, he's used to everything. The key is to see everything in training, get exposed to it. Then you can, if you mess up in training, you can go back and study what you need to do different. But you can't figure it out on fight day. All of a sudden, well, what was that move? That was a pretty cool punch he hit me with in the face. You know, you don't want to be thinking that at the time, right? You need to figure that out in training, and I think that's where Barao has the advantage. You know, so many great training partners to put him in so many situations, and then when he comes out, he's smiling, he's confident, he's ready to go.
When we come back to Fight News Now, we'll hear from one of Canada's top 155-pound fighters.
Fighting out of Montreal, Quebec, Canada, Mike the Martian Ricci.
Welcome back to our special edition of Fight News Now. At UFC 165 at the Air Canada Centre, 7 Canadians will be in action, and we'll tell you who they are right now. While the UFC 165 main card in Toronto may not feature any Canadians, the promotion has loaded the undercard with talent from the Great White North. In the preliminary main event, Mike Ricci will make his 3rd trip to the Octagon to face Miles Jury. TriStar Product began his career on the Quebec regional scene before signing to fight for the Bellator organization with a 5-0 record. In his debut at the promotion, he was derailed by one punch from current Bellator featherweight champion Pat Curran.
That is it! Just like that!
He returned to the regional scene and went 2-1 over his next 3 fights, before landing a spot on the Ultimate Fighter 16 as a welterweight. The undersized welterweight would return to his natural weight class in front of his hometown crowd and secured his first UFC win with a unanimous decision over Colin Fletcher. Also heading to the cage in Toronto will be George St-Pierre's first professional opponent, Ivan Menjivar, who's scheduled to face Wilson Hayes. Menjivar is a proven finisher and has stopped his opponents in 19 of his 25 wins. His most recent bout came against perennial contender Uriah Faber, who finished him with a rear naked choke in the first round of their rematch, so he will look to get back in the win column. Training out of London, Ontario at the Adrenaline Training Centre, Chris Clements will face off against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. The Menace is primarily a stand-up fighter with 10 knockouts and 11 wins. Fortunately, his opponent in this bout is also a stand-up guy, so fans should expect an exciting war, and possibly the fight of the night. Mitch Gagnon will look to notch his 2nd UFC win when he faces off against Dustin Kimura.
You know, I'm looking for the finish, I'm looking for that big win, and that fight of the night, that fight that people will remember, right? That's what I'm about.
The Sudbury native also looks forward to fighting in front of the Toronto crowd for the 2nd time. TriStar product John McDessie will ride a 2-fight win streak into Toronto as he faces Brazilian Rene Forte. The Bull has gone 4-2 in the Octagon, but hasn't been the finisher he was when he started his career with 6 straight stoppages. Jesse Ronson will face Michel Praceres in his Octagon debut. He comes in as a replacement for Mark Bocek and rides an 8-fight win streak. Making his 3rd Canadian UFC appearance, Roland Delorme will face fellow Ultimate Fighter alum Alex Caceres. Stunning is coming off a victory in his hometown of Winnipeg and will look to score the 4th win of his UFC tenure. We are happy to be joined by Canadian Mike Ricci, who will be in action at UFC 165. And Mike, thanks so much for joining us. First things first, we got to talk to you about, do you feel like you have a target on your back? Anybody that trains with the welterweight champion or comes from Zahabi MMA, they expect big things. Do you feel that way?
I really don't look that deeply into it. You know, I'm out of the Ultimate Fighter now, and I'm officially a UFC fighter. So you know, I take it one fight at a time, and I don't really focus too much on who's whose sights I'm in. So I just go one fight at a time.
What do you need to do to be the best Mike Ricci possible?
Well, I think every fighter is different. So I obviously have my own recipe. I think that the greatest fighters of our day and of all time have found what works for them in their recipe and caught their stride. And I still think that I'm slowly adding to my repertoire and figuring out what works for me and what doesn't. I'm still a relatively young fighter, but every camp I'm growing and learning and figuring out what works for me.
John and I called one of your fights, and going into the 5th round of that fight, you appeared to be down, and you had a crazy 5th round, 20 to 25 minutes in it, won that round. How can you start a fight and start your night out with that same kind of intensity as you went into round 5 that time?
Well, that fight was different. I had a certain strategy, and I was sticking to it. I trained for this guy specifically. It didn't work, but I stuck to it, and I stuck to it, and round after round after round, and finally I sat down. I was like, this fight's too close. Like, we're just gonna scrap. We're just gonna fight. So I came out and I just let it all hang out. I think you have to have somewhat of that, but you still need to have a strategy. So, and I've learned to become a faster starter as well.
When you talk about your recipe, is that something that you do as a self-exploration, that you go and you look at your past fights and say, oh, I need to work on this? Or obviously you work with one of the best trainers in all of mixed martial arts. Do you sit down with your team and say, okay, this is what we need to work on? Or again, is it just all about you?
No, I think it's inside the gym and outside as well, right? There's the mental aspect, the emotional aspect, and I think that, once you figure out what works for you, you got to keep going, improve on what you're good at, and fix up what you're not good at, right? If I'm super great, with my left hand, which I always have been, I'm gonna make sure that left hand is top notch. And if I'm not so good with another strike, I'll continuously work at that. So I think you just got to build around everything.
Miles Jury, who you're facing, this is a guy has shown a really solid kickboxing game. Is this an opportunity for you to test that area or to try to take it somewhere else?
To be honest with you, I don't really look at Jury, as a form of test. I believe I test myself. I think that I've gotten far in this sport believing that. I don't focus on the other guy, what he's good at, what he's not good at. I've watched a bit of his film, and then after that, turned it off, haven't seen it in months. So I focus on myself, and I'm looking to test myself in certain areas. And, that's how I take it.
We've heard this a number of times from fighters saying that, I'm not concerned with what he's going to do. I'm bringing this to the table. But how do you anticipate surprises? So you get into a situation and you're ready to do the things that you need to do, but suddenly you're faced with something that you might not have seen before. And I know you obviously work with one of the best teams out there, so you would expect that you've seen these things. But how do you amend on the fly?
Well, I believe adapting is more important than a game plan, in my opinion. I think you should have a base, but being able to adapt to the changes is far more important. So I have such a vast, variety of training partners. I've seen so many styles. I spar with guys who fight at 135, 145. I spar guys who fight at 205. So I see different looks, different, reaches, power, styles. So I'm going to go in there and let my body react. I think if you go in there and you start to overthink things, you might be one step behind the opponent.
And talk about your team. Obviously, it's very important to have quality training partners, right, and people that are looking out for your best interests. Why is Zahabi MMA the home for you?
Well, I'm blessed to have grown up in Montreal, so my family and my friends are all there, so that's where I've built my life, and we have such a great gym. But it's not only TriStar, it's the boxing clubs, the jiu-jitsu clubs, and the wrestling clubs, and I feel the attitude and the temperament of the athletes there. And I've been to other places, I've trained at Greg Jackson's, I've trained at Renzo Gracie's, and all these camps are great, and I think I would thrive in any one of them, but TriStar is my home, and the system that they built there I think is constantly improving. So.
Talk to us a little bit about that walk that you're going to take on Saturday night from the back room and the 20, 30 minutes before it. Do you go through the exact same process every time, or is the experience always different for you?
Well, I just get a good sweat going. I warm up, and once I get my sweat going, that's it for me. I just completely shut off. It's time to go. You get there, and there's a lot going on, and you try not to pay attention to it, but once you get your sweat going, it's go time, right? So, active warm up, stretch, go through what I go through, and then when it's time to go, it's time to go.
Is the mental process the same every time? Like, do you have, whether you're thinking about doubts or confidence or him or your friends or what you did, are you thinking the same thoughts? Is it the same mental process?
No, I think that every fight is different. You're going to go in there with a ton of different variables, right? Where you are, how you train for that fight, who you're fighting, so if you have any injuries, any soreness. So I think it's different every single time. I've went into some fights and barely warmed up, and been not nervous at all. And then I went to some fights where I was like, I want to leave. Like, I'm getting out of here. Like, I'm gone. And so, regardless, you're going to go in there and overcome what's put in front of you. And I think now this is not my first rodeo, right? I've done this a lot. And I think when it comes to nerves and all that stuff, that it's really to a minimal now.
Is this what's a perfect fight for you? Obviously, if you go in on Saturday night, get a first-round knockout, that's pretty good. But is that a perfect fight for you, or do you like to go in there, get the experience, feel what it's like to be in the second, third round of the big show,
or overcome something, or right. What are you seeking?
Well, for this fight, it's 3 rounds, it's 15 minutes. I'm just looking to work for 15 minutes. So. Perfect fight, of course, like I'm looking for a W, but I will take that W any which way I can. So if he slips up for 1 second or makes one wrong move, I'll be all over him. And I'm sure that's what's gonna happen with him. We're fighting at such a high level, you make one mistake, you're done for. So I'm gonna go out there and be as composed as possible, implement my game plan, and work for 15 minutes as hard as I have to.
Mike Ricci takes on Miles Jury at UFC 165. Don't go anywhere, as we have more of the special edition of Fight News Now when we continue.
From the Air Canada Centre in Toronto,
Welcome back to a special edition of Fight News Now. John Ramdeen, Robin Black, and UFC veteran Jeff Jocelyn. We're talking about some of the action that's taking place on the undercard, and it's one of my picks for Fight of the Night. It is the heavyweights, Matt Mitrione and Brendan Schaub. And again, no disrespect to Brendan Schaub, but I'm even surprised that I'm saying that he's going to be involved in Fight of the Night. But when you have two big heavyweights that are going to stand and trade, somebody's fallen down. How important is it to just go out and entertain the audience?
I think it's huge for your popularity with the fans, and you go on the internet boards and they can make or break you very quickly on those things. So a lot of positive feedback for guys that go out there and bang, and I think we're going to see that this fight.
I think Schaub may look to take this to the ground, although you're right, he's been getting a lot of heat for that. And when he was competing in jiu-jitsu, he was sort of hesitant to engage.
The Metamoris show.
Yeah, and Schaub is a very likable guy. Like, fans who meet him like him. There's a certain, I don't know what it is about the dude. Very, very likable dude. He wants to keep it that way. He wants to get in here and throw, but he sure wouldn't do too badly if he got on top in this fight.
Matt Mitrione, obviously he's got some big power. Both guys have big power. Matt Mitrione, we look back at that fight with Czech Congo, a lot of people anticipated it could be Fight of the Night as well, because two big guys wanting to stand and trade, but you don't always get what you hope for. And again, is it more important to go out and ensure that the fans have a great experience by seeing two heavyweights throw down, or for the fighter's mentality, is it, I need a victory here because my job could be on the line?
Yeah, it's great to say. I can say, I want to see these guys throw down and fight hard and be exciting, but ultimately you have to win the fight. And we've seen that many times. Many fighters go out there and just win over and over again, and it solidifies their contract with the UFC. It makes them bigger paydays. So that's really the bottom line from a fighter's perspective.
What I find interesting about this one is these guys are buddies. They were close friends right up until they signed the contract, and now they're playing a little bit back and forth. Hard to tell how real it is sometimes. But have you ever fought a close friend, Jeff?
Not that I remember. It could be a late night after the bar, but no, most of my friends are my students, so they know if we end up fighting or they see me on the mats the next day. So, but in professional, no, never had to fight a friend.
The unfortunate thing about mixed martial arts is that it's a business, and it really is a small talent pool when you think about things, especially the heavyweight division.
Yeah.
Eventually, if you're training with a big heavyweight who is fighting in the UFC, there's a good chance that you're going to be fighting him one day.
And when you train, you want to train with guys that are your weight division, one above and one below. So these are a lot of the guys that could potentially drop down to your division, be in your division now, or go up a division. So these are all, and again, you're training with top guys like you mentioned. So the chances are high that eventually you're going to fight a friend.
We got to talk about a 170 matchup. Chris Clemens, the menace, who we've seen a number of times here on Fight Network and around the Canadian scene, taking on the Wonderboy Stephen Thompson. Again, clash of styles, kind of. Wonderboy coming from that karate background, and for Clemens coming from the Sean Tompkins school of Muay Thai. A good clash of styles here. Tell us the differences between karate and Thai boxing.
Well, Chris also has Taekwondo background too, so I think this could end up looking like a, Jackie Chan flick. This fight, this could be, fight for the ages. Unpredictability. This fight is, you have side kicks, you have hook kicks, you have spinning back fists. I think you have a lot of different options that these fighters are going to use. I think it can be very, very exciting. If it goes to the ground, we'll have to see how that plays out, but I hope that it stays on the feet for a while.
Yeah. And right now, we will hear from the Wonderboy.
This is who I am. I've been fighting since I was 15. Ever since I was a kid, I was doing karate tournaments. This is who I am. To go out there and test your skills against somebody else. So that's just why I'm in for it, man. I mean, the money's great, but I do it for the fun of it, man. It's my love.
His techniques come from very odd angles.
Every time I would try and search for the knockout, it would never happen. And then I would wear myself out. So right now, like I step into the cage, especially fighting for many years, I just go out there and do my thing. If it happens, it happens, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. So I just go out there, don't look for it, let it happen. A lot of people get in there and they win a few fights and they lose once and they just think the world's come to an end and they just give up. That's just not who I am. I grew up in the martial arts and we're all about, staying positive. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. If you don't win, you don't win, but you go out there and train hard and keep positive people around you to keep your mind focused.
Jeff, we got to talk about Wonderboy, his background, his philosophy. How important is it to be unpredictable in today's age of mixed martial arts when everybody kind of knows everything?
It can be good and bad. I think when Machida came in, he was unpredictable. People started to figure him out a bit and started landing more strikes on him. It can work, and he's shown, Wonderboy has shown some fancy kicks from different angles, and it can be, I think it's going to be an asset for him as long as he can keep mixing it up and keep adding the fundamental stuff too as well, increasing his boxing skill, getting better at wrestling, getting better at jiu-jitsu.
But still keeping those things in his back pocket when he needs to use them, so to speak.
For sure. Those tricks can be invaluable, when in a tough fight.
What I find interesting is that one moment where guys are bringing in a karate type background like he does, where his stance is different, his movement is different, he's fighting off the back leg differently, and then they slowly kind of bring it closer and where their stance becomes more similar, they add in low kicks and their boxing becomes straighter. At what point do you diminish the returns of how different you were at the beginning and give them up for those fundamentals that you're adding?
Well, you do. You have to get in there and you have to set in if you want to finish people. You can outpoint them and win fights by moving and just throwing jabs and throwing fancy kicks and moving around, but if you want to finish someone, you really have to set your stance, and you kind of get back to that conventional Muay Thai stance or boxing stance to finish the job.
For Chris Clemens, he has mentioned that he will eventually make the move down to 155 pounds.
He likes burgers, though.
Yes, he does like burgers. Turtle burgers. Have you seen these things
I know.
online? Ridiculous. You have to Google turtle burgers. It makes no sense, but delicious nonetheless.
He loves them.
But with that mentality, is he looking past this fight right now? And is it important to stay focused, or is it important to look at the longevity of your career and where you stand?
I think it's okay. I think he's trained hard for this fight. I actually worked with Chris. He came down to my school a few times, and we trained a lot of no-gi stuff. So he's taken this fight very seriously, and I'm hoping he does very well. And the future for him, maybe he has, right now he can't cut down to that weight, but in the future he wants to get down to 55.
What I find interesting about him is he sort of, even though he comes from sort of the Sean Tompkins system and he has really solid training partners, he kind of marches to the beat of his own pretty weird drum. He likes to fight the way he likes to fight. He's not really a game plan guy. He likes to get in there and make a fight happen. Kind of like Matt Brown, but without the extreme aggression. And I think that makes him hard to deal with. And this is a really interesting fight because both of these guys are very out of the ordinary.
Yeah, exactly. I think he's as unpredictable as Wonderboy, so this is why it can be so exciting.
Also, talk about injuries. We know that he's had to deal with a plethora of injuries over his MMA career. Where is he now? You've worked with him.
I seem fine. I seem very strong, in a good mindset. Everything seemed great, so I'm excited to see him in the cage on the weekend.
Clemens' teammate Jesse Ronson will be making his UFC debut, kind of taking this fight on short notice against Michael Praceres. Is it a good thing to answer the call and say, yes, no matter what, I'm taking this fight, whether it's 2 days' notice or 2 weeks' notice?
For sure. You know, when I got the call to fight Josh Koscheck, we got a chance to get thrown right into the top of the mix. So Ronson has the same opportunity. He wins this fight, all of a sudden, you know, he's right up there. He's going to make more money quicker. He's going to be able to really develop his stock as a fighter.
This is an interesting matchup because he's fighting a guy who's really, really good on the ground, but a little more fundamental based and still developing on the stand-up, whereas Jesse's stand-up is out of control. He works an angles game and a movement game that's really crazy. You got to figure his goal is just to keep this one on the feet.
Yeah, and I'm hoping he lands those devastating body shots. He's always known for the body shots. I like body shots. My boxing coach, Vito Brancaccio, loves body shots. So when he was fighting on our card and he was landing the body shots and on the Score Fighting series, it's always exciting to see that thing.
And what about the nerves with your UFC debut? I mean, this is the make it or break it kind of moment for your mixed martial arts career, fighting under the bright lights. I mean, you fought on smaller shows, you fought on the big shows. Does it affect the way that you perform?
It can, but if you train your mind properly, there's systems out there that you can do to prepare your mind for battle. A lot of positive thinking. I think you can be fine in your debut. You're not going to feel that type of nerves that Dana White always talks about.
When we come back, it's all about UFC 165 on this special edition of Fight News Now. So don't go anywhere.
Fighting out of Montreal, Quebec, Canada, Ivan, the pride of Octagon, Menjivar.
We are happy to be joined by Ivan Menjivar, who takes on Wilson Hayes at UFC 165. And Ivan, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
First thing I want to ask you is, how dangerous is it to take a fight against a fighter on short notice, essentially? I know you've had a little bit of time, but this is a guy that really obviously would love to spoil your party here in Toronto. Why take a fight like this?
Because for the money, because we love fighting, I was prepared for that fight. So they just called me 3 weeks before. They say, "Oh, your opponent have an injury." No problem. Okay, you have a fight for me? Yes, we'll try to find a fight for you. And they tell me a name. Let's do it. It's like that. At this level, we cannot say no, not this time, because it's time to fight. So that's what we do for living. So I have to go back home and continue training and living. So.
And John asked you about taking a fight like this. I want to ask you about taking fights over a decade ago when you were a pioneer in Canada.
Yeah.
Why were you wanting to fight then? People didn't really know what the sport was at the same level they do now. It wasn't as popular. Why did you want to fight?
Really easy. I starting with like a little kids, watching TV, watching the martial arts sport and comic books, and just with my brother we decided to start doing martial arts, and I really enjoy it, I'm a really soccer player, I don't like to fall and I get injuries. So in fighting, we can't cheating. We just fight for real. We never get hurt. We bleeding, but it's fake. We don't feel the pain. So that's why I decided to fighting. We have so much opportunities to punch the guys from everywhere. So that's the fun. That's what I decided to do MMA.
You wanted to fight because you got hurt less than when you played soccer.
No. Soccer is fun, but then I'm allergic to grass. So it's no grass in the ring. So that's why I say, okay, let's give up soccer and let's do MMA.
For you, it seems very important to go out and entertain, be creative, show your full skill set. Where does that come from?
But I don't know, it's inside my head, too much punch in the head. So that's why when you're fighting, let you free, I have a strategies, I think, my opponent do this, I do that. But at the end, it's just a fight, and I just put myself over there. If I knock him out, it's good. If he knock me out, but
not as good.
It's not good. Fun, but that's part of the game. So it's not a dangerous sport. That's what people think many times. Oh, this is fighting. That's dangerous. No, it's really safe compared to other sports.
But I look at Wilson Hayes. This is a guy that would love to get a big victory over you because people don't know his name. Yeah. They've seen you fight so many times. Obviously, he's going to be in the best shape that he's ever been in. He's going to take this fight very, very seriously. What do you anticipate for Saturday night?
First, he's have a good talent jiu-jitsu guy. So this guy, you don't give a hand because he take the elbow, the neck, and the shoulders, everything. So I want to try to do a boring jiu-jitsu match. Don't give it nothing to him. We stand up, playing, have fun, don't make him comfortable in the ring. And I want to take more advantage for myself. So I'm prepared for a 3-round match, and anything can happen in the fight, The fight can be 2 seconds, can be 3 rounds of full action, everything.
What do you prefer?
Honestly, I prefer to stay at home, drink, watching the fights. But no, I do this all the time. I just trained yesterday, before that, and sparring last week, and everything.
You've used the word fun, and we've talked to you like 6 times. Is this really fun for you, like the training, everything, or is it just the fight itself that's fun?
It's fun because I don't think of nothing. You see, I don't have the stress to go there and, oh my God, what kind of fight I'm gonna make? No, they pay me to go there and beat up people and fight. That's beautiful, no?
Yeah.
So I wake up in the morning, I'm in the hotel, try to cut away. That's the bad part.
Yeah.
Sure. But go there and fight, that's it. Drink, eat, go there and fight. It's perfect. And
Good
then after that,
times.
you back home and you start training again. So that's what I do right now, and I enjoy the moment, it's fun. Good.
Ivan Menjivar takes on Wilson Hayes at UFC 165 in Toronto. Don't go anywhere. Fight News Now continues. Fight fans, don't forget, immediately following the UFC 165 pay-per-view, we will be here live in studio with a special 2-hour edition of Fight News Now, including the UFC 165 post-fight press conference. This is your destination for everything UFC. And Robin, we got to talk about Jon Jones. This guy just simply phenomenal. But Alexander Gustafsson could do what Chris Weidman did and topple the giant. It isn't unconceivable because, we've said it time and time again, anything can happen in mixed martial arts.
Yeah, and that's absolutely true. And, we've talked heavily about Jon Bones Jones, and so has everybody else coming into this. And you know what? We haven't talked a lot about Gustafsson because for whatever reason, we're not feeling that he has the greatest chance of winning. We and a lot of people like us get the feeling that Jon Jones is one of these super dominant types. If Gustafsson proves us all wrong, and it's happened many times before, come Monday morning, he'll be the only guy we're talking about. This is an interesting fight. If it turns out that Jones is just as dominant as we think, it's always exciting to see the best fighter in the world perform. And if it turns out that Gustafsson makes us all eat our words, that is going to be exciting too.
For Jon Jones, what challenges are left? Let's just say that all the critics are right, that he goes out and he beats Alexander Gustafsson in impressive form, stops him in the first or second round. What's left for this guy? Is a move to heavyweight in the stars for him or in the cards for him, or is it more likely he'll be taking on a guy like Glover Teixeira or a fight with Dan Henderson?
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, hopefully he's not thinking about those things for him, for his sake, because if he is, Gustafsson is a real challenger. We know that he's not, or we feel that he's not quite at that level, but if you're forgetting and you're looking too far ahead, you're in a lot of trouble. But let's say that he does win this fight like many expect him to win. Heavyweight will be the biggest test for him. Right now, I don't know that many people can deal with him. He seems unbeatable with a combination of genetic superiority, elite skills, and a good mind. So right now, he feels unbeatable, and going into this weekend, he feels unbeatable.
Do you have a pick for fight of the night at UFC 165?
That's a good one. I think those heavyweights are going to go. One of those heavyweights is going to fall late in the first round, and I think that could end up being fight of the night.
I agree. Remember, 7 Canadians in action at the Air Canada Centre for UFC 165. And don't forget to tune in after the fights. We want to thank Jeff Jocelyn, Mike Ricci, Ivan Menjivar, Roland Delorme. He is Robin Black. I am John Ramdeen. Enjoy the fights on Saturday night.